Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. An undocumented migrant was charged with murder after allegedly setting a homeless woman on fire.
Gruesome and deadly attack on the subway. Police have a person of interest in custody after someone set a woman on fire on an F train, killing her.
Police say the killer walked up to the victim and lit her clothes on fire. By the time officers got to the woman, she was fully engulfed in flame.
This is one of several violent attacks in the subway system this weekend. One person was killed. Another was injured in a stabbing incident on a 7 train during an apparent robbery gone bad in Woodside, Queens. And yesterday, 2 people shot on a subway platform in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn.
The subway violence comes during a time authorities are trying to assure New Yorkers about the safety of mass transit ahead of congestion pricing next month and a probable fare hike this summer. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon.
The NYPD tonight is calling cameras now in every subway car a game changer. MTA video taken in an F train at Stillwell Avenue captured the terrifying crime this morning.
It offered detectives immediately answers to questions that they had. What happened?
Officers had seen and smelled smoke and came running over.
What they saw was a person standing inside the train car, fully engulfed in flames.
They got the flames out with a fire extinguisher, but the woman died at the scene. The video also offered clear pictures of the man who had used a lighter to set fire to her clothes while she may have been sleeping and stayed and watched.
We asked the media to broadcast those images far and wide so we could use the viewing public as a force multiplier. And New Yorkers came through again.
A group of high school students spotted the man in the photo on another train and called 911.
Our transit sergeant responded to that location, met with these young high school students, looked inside the train and saw an individual that he recognized from wanted flyers that we got out earlier.
The suspect was taken into custody. Police say he's a citizen of Guatemala in New York since 2018. Tonight, the governor praised the quick arrest, but her tweets today about additional cameras, officers, and National Guard members helping bring subway crime down have been met with concerns about fare hikes and the congestion pricing toll meant to make the subway more appealing on an especially violent weekend. Overnight, a man was stabbed to death in what police think was a robbery attempt on a 7 train in Woodside. And yesterday, panicked subway riders ran from gunfire at a Q train station in Sheepshead Bay, where 2 people survived being shot, and the search continues for the shooter. The subway cameras in Coney Island this morning and the presence of officers in transit played critical roles in that quick apprehension, but still couldn't stop a man from killing a woman on the subway for no apparent reason. That woman still hasn't been identified tonight. She was burned beyond recognition. Outside police headquarters in Lower Manhattan, Sonia Rincon, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Now, in this disturbing alleged incident that took place on an F train at the Coney Island station in Brooklyn, 33-year-old Sebastian Zapata, a migrant from Guatemala who entered the country illegally, allegedly lit a homeless woman who was sleeping on that F train on fire. And as Sebastian Zapata allegedly lit this woman on fire, passengers on this train wound up watching this incident, and Sebastian Zapata got up out of his seat, went over to a bench, and basically watched this woman's whole body burn. And as her body was burning, this is where a photo was shown of a police officer walking by this woman being on fire, and eventually this woman wound up in a state of shock and then eventually collapsed and wound up dying as a result of her burns. Now, after lighting this woman on fire, Sebastian Zapata allegedly left the train station and was soon found later on in another part of New York City, where he was arrested and charged for the murder of this homeless woman and also charged with arson. Now, the police see this as a very disturbing, isolated incident. However, when I take a critical examination of Sebastian Zapata's alleged behavior, it definitely does fit the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and it further shows how depraved humanity has become over the last 60 years since the murder of Kitty Genovese. Now, this entire incident with this homeless woman mirrors what happened many years ago in the 1960s with the death of Kitty Genovese, a woman who was basically on her way home from work when she was attacked by people, screamed for help, and got no help at all. And sadly, the entire nation has become extremely more apathetic over the last 60 plus years since the death of Kitty Genovese, because people sat on that train completely indifferent as this Guatemalan migrant went out here and allegedly lit this woman on fire on a train filled with passengers. And what's even more disturbing is that a member of the NYPD did absolutely nothing to help this homeless woman whose body was engulfed in flames. This is what is extremely disturbing about this entire incident, how people in this country have just become so completely indifferent to human life as related to the homeless that they wouldn't even go out here and make an effort to help a homeless person who basically was being preyed upon, and being preyed upon because we basically have become indifferent to homeless people to the point where we don't even see them as human beings. And basically that's what the legal precedent was set by the overall death of Jordan Neely. Now, this case basically continues a disturbing trend that I'm seeing as related to the way we treat the homeless, because when the case of Jordan Neely, basically that case showed depraved indifference to human life. I mean, here was a homeless man who was again having a mental health episode, and as he was having this mental health episode, Daniel Penny decided to go out here and get behind Jordan Neely in an effort to allegedly restrain him, but showed lack of any sort of self-control because he was basically looking to again play the white knight in this situation, and looking to defend people from something that people see every day on the trains here in New York City. I've been, again, riding the train since I was 14 years old in 1987, and ever since that time, I've learned to basically see these episodes that some homeless people have, and basically just continue, if they continue to get out of control, move on to another car. Unfortunately, when it came to Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely, sadly this has created a very disturbing legal and social precedent, a very dangerous and legal and social precedent that has led to people becoming even more indifferent to human life, becoming so indifferent to human life that they basically see this man going out here who entered the country illegally, lighting a human being on fire and having no regard for that person's life at all, and having no efforts to even go out here and subdue this individual for participating in this reprobate and depraved act. And I have to wonder who is more reprobate and depraved, this Guatemalan migrant who entered the country illegally, or the American people. That's the critical question I am asking myself, because it takes a society of people to become, again, extremely indifferent to human life, to watch somebody basically die for the third time. The first time we saw this type of depraved indifference was in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd that was done right in front of the American people. And that first time, Americans basically got up out of their seats and looked to fight against our country in the uprisings, which was the right thing to do, because when you see An injustice like that, the only thing you can do is get up and fight. But what's really sad is that with over the course of the COVID pandemic, people have become more and more indifferent to human life. And as they've become more and more indifferent to human life, this is why people were out here could see how Daniel Penny's actions were not criminal and basically thought of him as a hero, similar to the way some people thought Bernie Goetz was a hero 40 years ago. And with this whole incident of this homeless person again winding up being set on fire, it shows further indifference to human life, fulfilling the word of God, in my opinion, as related to the love of many waxing cold. The love of many basically waxed cold on that cold F train at Coney Island, and sadly this woman basically wound up losing her life because this migrant who had depraved indifference to human life basically thought he could do whatever he pleased inside of the United States because America basically has not set any sort of boundary or established any sort of standard for humanity over the last 60 years, and this is basically what has been exacerbated by the far left policies of the Biden administration and encouraged by the Adams administration by allowing many of these migrants to enter New York City under the sanctuary city policies. The sanctuary city policies that basically have turned New York into an insane asylum where people like Sebastian Zapata basically believe they can do whatever they please. They believe they can do whatever they please because no one will hold them accountable because we don't have a boundary at the border as related to ICE here in New York due to the policies of the de Blasio administration, which made it where ICE and the NYPD could not communicate with each other. And what's happening now is you have this migrant who basically sees the policies of New York basically encouraging people who entered the country illegally not to have to respect the laws of the U.S. Constitution, not have to respect the social rules of the United States, not even having to respect basic human decency. That's what's happening here with Sebastian Zapata as related to his alleged actions. This migrant basically had no regard for the human life of a homeless person, and this is why he could go out here and participate in this sadistic and sociopathic behavior of setting this woman on fire. However, those policies were basically enabled and encouraged by New York Mayor Eric Adams as related to him looking to virtue signal and get brownie points with the Biden administration. And those policies basically have opened the door for this type of, again, hatred of humanity. This is pure evil. That's all I can call this guy. This guy basically is pure evil, and he's pure evil because he basically shows no regard for human life, no regard for human decency, and this goes beyond borders. It goes far beyond borders as related to this man showing no regard for people, no regard for people at all. That here is a person at their lowest point, this homeless woman at her lowest point, just basically trying to get on a train to stay warm, because I've seen lots of homeless people and they basically get on the train to stay warm. And as someone who worked at AmeriCorps Vista trying to help get resources with a job readiness program to help the homeless, I mean, this hurts my heart. Here's a person just staying on a train, just trying to stay warm, possibly just riding it up and down until they can basically, the weather gets a little bit better. And this person just believes, oh, I don't have to care about another human being. And what's really sad here is that there's a guy who entered the country illegally, basically was struggling himself, and felt like he could go out here and have power over another human being because he didn't care about another human being. And because he felt like he was feeling powerless, this was his way of getting power by going out here and looking to destroy the life of another human being, and sitting there again casually watching this whole incident, again sat there on a bench casually watching this woman's whole body burn. And what's even more disturbing is that other people sat there and watched this woman's body burn. And I don't know who's more depraved and who has more depraved indifference to human life, whether it be this 33-year-old Guatemalan migrant who was more depraved, or many of the New Yorkers who basically sat there and watched this happen. I don't know who's more depraved, that migrant or the New Yorkers, or the politicians who basically created the policies that created this whole situation, or the legal precedent that was set by Daniel Penny's whole case basically being thrown out of court. I mean, this has made New York a whole lot less safer, a whole lot less safer than it was even in the dark days of the 1980s, made it even less safer than it was back then during the days of the crack epidemic, where I saw, again, the start of even more indifference to human life, because the addiction to money made people more depraved and indifferent to human life. Because I remember growing up back then and seeing teenage girls basically getting involved with drug dealers who sold poison to their own people, and having less regard for human life to the point where they would basically look to go out here and start stuff with guys and then send these drug dealers out to go kill them on kamikaze missions, as related to having no regard for human life. And it's this level of depravity and ruthlessness that makes me, again, wonder what happened to people here in New York. I mean, things are progressively worse than the time of Kitty Genovese, which started to show the, again, indifference to human life, because this basically showed, again, how disturbing things were as related to life in this country. I mean, here's a guy walks up to a complete stranger, lights her on fire with a lighter, and just sits there and watches this happen. And again, that's just like those people say they sit there and want to say they want to watch the world burn. And basically, this is, again, troubling all around. I mean, this guy entered the country illegally, was deported, and then came back into the country to basically murder someone, because he feels like nobody has regard for him, so he has no regard for them. And again, it takes a special type of evil to participate in this type of crime. And basically, this guy, again, all of this stuff was caught on camera. So this man is on the road to possibly going to jail for the rest of his life, where they're going to be burning his backside in the penitentiary. I'm not going to go into all of that, the commissary list, because this whole act is just an act of complete evil. Again, this is something only a person with the devil in them would do. And again, just complete evil. And again, it just shows me how depraved people are and how much worse this country is getting as related to the entire man crisis, in that people basically have no sense of humanity whatsoever, because that's what happens with a lot of these beta males. Again, they're just, again, antisocial individuals. And this dude basically is on a next level of evil that I find to be quite troubling, on a next level of evil. And this guy basically, he needs to be in prison for the rest of his life, before he possibly takes that trip to hell, because this type of evil, again, shows us how sick and depraved people have become. But this is a nation that basically made a hero out of the guy who murdered the United Healthcare CEO. And again, this is just showing how much the love of many in America is waxing cold, and that's leading to our man crisis getting progressively worse, because it's showing that men don't have regard for the life of people. And again, a man's role is supposed to protect a woman, but this man didn't want to protect a woman because he saw a woman as less like a roach or a bug, saw her as less like a roach or a bug that he could basically destroy a person's life. And this has nothing to do with mental illness. I don't believe this man was mentally ill. No, this was just pure evil, plain and simple. A lot of people want to say that things are mental health, but mental health, again, I don't believe has a place in this at all. No, this is part of a disturbing trend over the last 60 years of people becoming more and more indifferent to human life. And if this whole story doesn't turn your stomach and as related to seeing, again, the complete evil of humanity that Jesus talked about, then I don't know what to say for you, because this is man being evil, and man being evil in the most depraved form of behavior I have seen ever in my almost 51 years of life. Now, if you want to learn what motivates guys like this to participate in this type of evil action, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos talking about The Man Crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box so I can continue paying for the internet, so I can continue making more content for you. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.